So as always, this shir should be for the merit of Shabbat Salah. We're now going to start the last part of discussion of the general introduction to the third Melachot. This is the third part to the shiurim of Chatzi Shiur, half measurements for Shabbat. So we're going to just make a brief shiur today because we're really at the very end of this whole discussion here. So what I want to just describe is, we've been discussing yesterday the machlokah between Rashi and Rambam. Rashi, we saw, holds that Chatzi Shiur and Melachot Shabbat is an Isur Midoraita. Rambam holds Isur Midorabanan, according to most opinions. We saw the Be'er Halacha holds that, according even to the Rambam, might be a Doraita. The question is, today, how do we paskin? Rashi, Rambam, Doraita, Dorabanan, what exactly it is. So there's a famous shur from the Chacham Tzvi, he writes in Siman Pei Vav, that he holds that itself that it should really be Isur Midorabanan, that is how we paskin. Rav Vaida brings him down as well, his shita in Yabia Omer, and says that really, even though most poskim say that it's only a Isur Midorabanan, we should be choshesh that it's a Isur Midoraita. We should be concerned that maybe there's a Isur Midoraita that comes involved, and we can only rely on the opinion that's a Isur Midorabanan if there's other leniencies as well. For instance, famous question that comes up, beautiful question. Let's say a person just washed the cup, and now there's a little residue of water that remains. Now, is he allowed to take that cup and start pouring from the urn hot water into it? So they say, oh, there's a little water over there. It's going to be cooked. It's going to be, Chatzi Shiur. Even though it's a few drops, it's Chatzi Shiur of Bishul. It's not a problem. So first of all, we might say the following. Chatzi Shiur is maybe Midorabanan. And more than that, since you don't care about the fact that it's going to be cooked, we don't care about the evaporation of these small particles of water, you just want the water inside. So with a few different leniencies, be able to matter something. But generally speaking, if there's no other leniency that applies besides that, a person should be machmer. That's really how most poskim can go. That's also how Rav Moshe Shterbach paskins in his Hanagot to Teshuvot. See over there. So now, interesting situation. What is the din when a person does multiple Chatzi Shiurim for a single malacha? So now, it depends in the situation whether it's b'shogeg or b'misid, whether he did it unintentionally or if he did it intentionally. So now there's a Gemara that's brought down as a Mishnah in Masechet Shabbat. It's the very last Mishnah to the parak, where it says the following. Mishnah says, Hakotev bet otiyot b'Shabbat, be'elama achat. So now let's say a person, he writes 2 letters on Shabbat. So we know writing 2 letters on Shabbat is Asur Midoraita. That is the chiyuv. A person writes 2 letters, it's a big problem. That's where the chiyuv applies. But he did it b'shtei alamot. He did it with what's known as 2 laps of awarenesses. Meaning the following. A person wrote 1 letter, he was told it's asur to do it, and then somehow during that day he forgot that's asur, and then he wrote the 2nd letter. So he completed the melacha with 2 Chatzi Shiuros combined. The question is he chayav? According to Rabbi Natan, b'chayev chachamim potlim. Rabbi Natan says it's a chiyuv. He is chayav for doing so, meaning he has to bring a korban because he did it unintentionally. But chachamim say it's potter. And they say the following, that because he has this yediyah, he has this understanding and this knowledge, that knowledge, that the forbidden nature of the malacha was given to him, therefore it separates the Chatzi Shiuros into two different compartments, and therefore they cannot combine. However, based on this, what we find is that the Gemara is only arguing if a person did it unintentionally and he was found out about it. But what if, number one, if he did it unintentionally but he did not know? Well, clearly if he did not know and he did it, one on Shabbos and in the morning, and then again the second one in the afternoon, unintentionally, he'd be chayav for korban. That's without a doubt. More than that, if he did b'mezid, if a person did the first part of the malacha intentionally on Shabbat in the morning, and then somewhere during the day he did the second part of it, that is mitzvah. That's going to be conjoined to become considered one full act of malacha. And we find this idea that's brought down by the Rambam as well. The Rambam holds that if a person takes a half a measurement of the food into the Reshut HaRabim, he takes from his inside to the outside, and then he goes back and takes the other half. So now, from conjoining these 2 measures, you get a full measurement, even though it happened in 2 separate actions, since it was done intentionally, and the full action was eventually completed, therefore it's a chiyuv. So now there's an interesting question that comes up. Let's say a person does the first part of the malacha this Shabbat, and then he does the other part of the malacha next Shabbat, or in 2 Shabbats, or maybe next year Shabbat, or maybe 30 years from now the Shabbos. So now the Minchat Chinuch wants to say that they do combine. They do combine. It doesn't mean that they have to combine within that Shabbat itself. But Minchat Chinuch, and it could be also Pri Megadim seems to be saying the same thing, that even among multiple Shabbatot, they will combine as well. Right? So, which is an interesting idea. There's no time lapse about how long it takes you to violate the Isur. Generally speaking, when a person wants to violate the Isur of eating, let's say chazir, he wants to violate eating pig. So we say that he has to do it within a certain period of time, which is known as, anybody wants to share what that time period is? What is it called halachically? Achilat hapras. Kedei achilat hapras. He has to eat it for a certain measurement, somewhere between 3 to 10 minutes, we say. However, regarding Shabbos, it doesn't work like this. Even if I did it this Shabbos and I do another Shabbos, it's going to be conjoined. There's no time lapse that agrees. So therefore, you might start to conjecture, how long does this take? If I do it from today and then I do it another 50 years from now, does that also come together? And Minchat Chinuch does give that possibility. There's something definitely that has to be discussed with. It's an interesting idea. So now, that's the first part. The last thing I want to describe is the following. Let's say a person does the first half of the shir, and then, before he gets to do the second half of the shir, the first half was destroyed. So in the following situation, the Gemara says in Masechet Shabbat Daf Pei Amud Aleph, that if a person takes half a measurement of food and brings it to the outside domain, and then he's about to take the other half, and he's going to take it to the outside. The Gemara says, if a dog came and snatched the first half, or if the first half was burned and obliterated, it doesn't exist any longer, he's not chayav, because it only works if both of them are existing together. So if one of the measurements were to somehow be destroyed, that would not be the case. So now the question is this true to all melachot or only the melachah of hotza'ah? The Gemara only says when you take it out. Maybe for the other 38 melachot, that would not be true. So the Pri Megadim in his introduction to Hilchot Shabbat says that it's not possible to say that it's true for all melachot, but it is possible to say that there is at least one other melachah that this is true for. What melachah is that? He says for the melachah of writing, for k'tiva. If a person writes a single letter on Shabbat morning, and then before he gets the chance to write the second letter, somebody came and erased it or burned it or washed it out, whatever the case is, but that letter is no longer around. It's gone. And then he came and wrote the second letter. Pri Megadim says, based on this, it should be patur. Why? Because the milach of writing means that I'm putting letters together that becomes meaningful. One letter itself in Hebrew is not meaningful. So therefore, if it's not there, it's not a considered meaningful action. But he says that to say that this is true for all the other melachot would be too much of a big chiddush for us to say that. And the only reason that it is clear from the Gemara that it's hotza'ah, the melacha of taking things out, which this applies to, is because the melacha of hotza'ah is distinct from the other melachot. It's known as to be what's called the melacha geruah. It's a deficient melacha that most people would never even assume is a melacha. Why is that the case? So the Rishonim explain the following. Now, what is the difference between taking something out as opposed to the other melachot? In every other melacha, there's a change to the substance itself. When a person is writing, there's something on the paper. When a person is cutting, that hair or whatever fur or wool is now detached. A person is taking a fruit from a tree. That tree is now detached from its fruit. Everything requires a substantial change. But when it comes to hotza'ah, taking things from one domain to another, there's nothing that changed. The book that I took out from my home to the outside is the same book. There's no change in it. So therefore, it's only over here that we can provide this chiddush that multiple things is required. Because the idea of hotza'ah itself is a big chiddush on its own. But to extend it to all other ones, it's very difficult to do so. And if that's the case, we would have to ask the question. If a person were to, let's say, violate a melacha, but he did it in two separate settings. He did the first half of the melacha in the morning, second half of the melacha in the afternoon. How many warnings would he be required? Would he be required any warning? Right? So let's say I gave him the warning for the first part, but I didn't give him the warning for the second part. So the Pri Megadim wants to say he's not chayav, he has to get the warnings twice. One for the first, one for the second. If the person missed one of them, it was not mitzvah because he probably didn't know. So therefore, both of them would be required for a full chiyuv skila or whatever it may be to be given after that. And with this, we finish our second real part of the introduction to the melacha of Shabbat. And B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to be starting, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, we'll see the first of the 39 melachot, which is what? zorea, sowing and planting, and all the other things related to that.
The learning is
Okay, so Mizad Hashem, we'll get into that. We're going to be having more of a discussion in the 39 Melachot itself. Baruch Na'olam, Amen.
Hazak Baruch.